Welcome to Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. Legal issues simplified through real client stories and real-world experiences. Creating simplicity in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to another episode of the Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto, with my co-host, Michael Byrd.
Thanks, Brad. As a business and healthcare law firm, we represent clients in multiple sectors and multiple specialties, especially healthcare.
Yes, we do.
This season, our theme is Specialty Spotlight, where each episode will visit about some of the nuances that can be found from a business and healthcare perspective in the various practice specialties.
Michael, I'm really excited today. We have a second-time guest joining us today. It's going to be awesome.
Before we start talking about our guests or to our guests, I got some work for you. I have a quiz for you, Brad.
Oh, no, I don't like quizzes. It's a quiz from you, so I'm very suspicious.
Okay, I'm going to read you 4 headlines.
All right, fair.
And they're a little out there, all of them. I want you to tell me which one is a true story.
Okay, sounds fair. I'm ready.
Okay. Notice the animal theme as we get into this.
Okay.
Number 1, rats fitted with tiny backpacks are being trained to help earthquake survivors.
Okay.
Number 2, company is willing to pay homeowners $2,000 for a study if you allow 100 cockroaches to be released in your home.
Okay.
Number 3, California court rules that bees are legally fish again.
Okay.
New York court rules that elephants are not people.
All right. Well, believe it or not, Michael, I actually know 3 of these stories are true because I think we read it in the same newsletter that you and I like. I'm struggling that any sane person would allow 100 cockroaches in their home, but considering the other 3 were true, I'm going to say all 4 headlines are true.
All 4 are true, and it's no fair because I got them at the same place that you know where they are.
Got it. Well, tell the audience where you found these weird animal stories.
So full credit goes to a online newspaper, so to speak. People don't know that term, newspaper, the younger generation. It's called The Morning Brew, and they're a great source of news in an easy-to-read format, and they often have these kind of weird but true articles.
Offbeat is putting it really nicely for these examples. Can you at least give the audience a little bit more context? I know you love context behind these headlines.
You want to know what the actual story is?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll start with the backpack-wearing rats. In Tanzania, a special group of rats are learning to crawl into earthquake debris wearing tiny backpacks, allowing rescue teams to communicate with the survivors. The backpacks apparently contain microphones, video gear, and location trackers.
Okay, so who would have thought this disease rodent could be helpful? But, as grateful as the survivors are to have a rat show up with all this little tiny backpack with stuff, it still probably has a little bit you're terrified to see a rat pop out at you. You're covered in rubble, and then it starts talking to you. Turns out, obviously, it's not the rat talking. But,
yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
What's the next one?
Cockroach story?
Yeah.
Okay. Apparently, a pest control company in North Carolina is offering up to 7 homeowners the opportunity to have 100 cockroaches released into their homes. This is a 30-day study that will allow them to test a new treatment, and they will be paid $2,000 for this. And I guess my question to you, Brad, is would you do that?
So these cockroaches in North Carolina cannot be like the cockroaches I grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana, where they were giant, huge, flying cockroaches. So no sane person could ever live in a house with just a few of these flying beasts. And I guess everyone has a price, Michael, but I think mine would be closer to $200 million, not $2,000, because first off, my wife and kids would move out immediately, and then I'd have to probably nuke the house and start from scratch.
Yes, my kids would completely lose.
I'm not saying I wouldn't, but not for $2,000.
200 million is pretty good.
Yeah,
and I probably would take a lower number than that.
All right, fair.
I don't. The next one really makes my head spin, man. I mean, a court rules that bees are legally fish again?
Yeah, the again part caught my attention. Give the background on this one.
Okay, so the classification by a court that bees are legally fish, it protects bees under the California Endangered Species Act. And so this is apparently the culmination of a 4-year legal battle between environmentalists and agricultural groups.
All right, and tell the audience apparently what the California Endangered Species Act is.
I'm going to, but I want everyone to note that I do not specialize in the California Endangered Species Act.
Okay.
And don't have great legal counsel.
Based on the fact that bees are fish, I don't think many people specialize in this.
Probably so. So it's an old law that originally only protects plants and the animal species.
Okay.
Apparently back in 2018, environmental groups were worried about the declining bee population.
Makes sense.
And found a workaround to expand the legal definition of fish to cover 4 species of endangered bees.
So let's go with 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, bee fish. I really do think Dr. Seuss would actually love hearing bees are fish now.
Oh, man, we made it 6 minutes in before the first Brad joke. But I will say this. It just shows you the power of having a good lawyer.
Yes.
You can get a bee classified as a fish.
Fair enough.
Okay. The last story is the slimmest connection that we have to our guest today because it happens to have happened in the home state of our guest. So this is the New York top court ruled that an elephant can't be considered a person.
Right. So give the backstory in this one.
Okay. Well, once again, this is originated from an animal rights group. And the group claimed that an elephant named Happy at the Bronx Zoo had been illegally detained and deserved to be transferred to a larger elephant sanctuary.
Okay.
The court determined that habeas corpus, something we all learned in law school,
that's a great word,
fundamental right that protects against unlawful detainment, it actually doesn't apply to non-human animals.
All right. Well, Michael, I guess the animal rights group should have claimed that the elephant was a bee, which we now know is a fish, and then Happy would have been protected on the California's Endangered Species Act and therefore must be released.
Well, I like where your head's at, but we're really reaching on our stretch there.
You know what? Let's bring on our guest. He's been very patient listening to the animal stories, so bring him on.
All right. Okay, we're moving on to the real stuff now. Okay, our guest today for the second time is Dr. Jarrod Frank. He is a dermatologist in Manhattan, born and raised in Manhattan, went to New York Medical College, did his training in New York. He has a practice with traditional dermatology and cosmetic dermatology. Again, I think we quoted this last time. The number, I looked it up because we want to be accurate.
Yes.
And I want to be able to tell my kids I know someone that is certified on social media, has 160,000 followers on Instagram. And so he's super active. What is really cool and our common bond is that there's just a heavy focus on education and training.
Yes.
And so it's a great resource. And Paul, welcome.
Thank you, my friend. I first want to give my disclaimer for this podcast that I would like to be legally determined as a panther, okay, not just as a dermatologist. My closest college friend went on to the Disney School of Animation, and he had made the decision that each of all of our friends would be designated as a different animation character. It never came to fruition, but now I realized I can do this legally.
Yes.
Yes.
And I think that's good. And I also want to make sure that I get you guys on my social media platform, and to show my audience here, I want to show everybody that it does take good lighting to make me look good. You guys are certainly well coiffed, and I want to make sure that we can include all this because, we're always working on the internet. You know what I'm saying? And again, it's a pleasure to be here a second time. I promise I'm going to be even better.
Well, absolutely thrilled to have you, and glad to learn that you're a Panther. So maybe you would have an opinion. I mean, you're in the New York area. You've probably been to the Bronx Zoo once or twice in your lifetime. So where are you standing on this whole the flight or freeing of Happy the elephant?
You know what? I think when it comes to human politics. The only thing that more potentially inflammatory is animal politics and how people feel about them. So I'm going to abstain from that. I just want everyone to be happy.
Yes.
Okay?
Love
it. That's great.
That's what my lawyer would tell me to do.
Yes. I was giving you hand signals under the table.
That's right. That's
awesome.
Right.
So, well, let's jump in. So you heard the introduction, Paul, and this whole season we're really camping out each episode with different specialties, really to highlight that there are nuances, that you can't just say I'm a doctor and that all the healthcare laws are just that's that, and that you actually have different business and healthcare challenges. So, love for you to introduce the dermatology specialty to the audience.
Well, the dermatology specialty, in my opinion, is probably the largest growing field of healthcare, mostly because, well, we live in an aging population. That's one thing. So healthcare as a whole is growing rapidly. But dermatology is one of the unique professions that has as much elective focused procedures as it does, medically essential ones. Because of the financial incentives involved in elective medicine, clearly it is such a booming market. Now, this is a good thing for consumers. It's a great thing for providers, but it comes really with a responsibility to be successful and safe and keep yourself out of legal trouble. It's really important that we educate the consumer, because people come in with preconceived notions, a lot of question marks, and they really, most importantly, in my opinion, need guidance. Now, in my business, we perform general dermatology and a full array of cosmetic and surgical procedures. So because of that, I really have to remain very focused, and with the guidance of legal guidance of folk like you who really help make my brand successful.
Talk a little bit about what the difference between traditional dermatology and elective cosmetic, like what are the types of procedures that you do?
Well, my focus as the lead provider is I focus on aesthetics. I'm trying to make people the optimized best version of themselves looking in the mirror. I do bring in skin health, skincare prevention, and all these things, because I do believe healthy skin is beautiful skin. But I'm really focusing on the elective things. And these are the things that are out of pocket. And it's a great topic because there are overlaps, right? Acne is a reimbursable insurance treatment. There are ICD-9 codes and procedural codes for this. But as soon as we start using lasers for acne, it becomes a non-coverable procedure. And I'm sure that there are a lot of people out there who would think acne is a cosmetic disease, that it doesn't affect your organs. But yet we know skin is the largest organ of the body. So this is what makes it not only exciting, but more difficult, because a lot of people have a question mark. What is cosmetic medicine? What is medical? I mean, I know of someone suffering from eczema and psoriasis all over their body. It's a physical disease, but we know that it affects the way they are perceived on an aesthetic level and an emotional level on the outside. And to me, this is the most exciting thing about dermatology, because ophthalmologists have always kind of coined the thing, eyes are the window to the soul. They may have better marketing, but honestly, I think the skin is really the window to the skull, because it tells us so much, not only about our overall health, but also on how we perceive ourselves and how the other perceives us on the outside.
Fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. So now that you kind of worked through just what is the dermatology and the differences in your practice alone, when you have these patients coming into your practice, what are some of the biggest challenges you see in dermatology for patients?
Well, as a provider, again, the procedures I'm doing all day, I'm injecting all day, I'm using devices and lasers all day, I'm doing body sculpting all day. Those are basically how it goes. I got 40 different technologies in my office days. When someone comes in, they're usually coming to me with how they look. And it's important to realize that I have to temper the expectations of patients. Mm-hmm. People may be coming in with insecurities. They may be coming in with information and ideals that are beyond the scope of what can be done because of Instagram filters, or looking at themselves in certain angles in the rearview mirror on the selfie, and they come in with a lot of knowledge. I have to really focus on aligning their expectations to what I could offer them, including considering risks, benefits, cost, willingness for downtime. These are all subtle innuendos that subconsciously go through my head after 20 years of practice with them. The main difference between what I'm doing and if a general dermatologist or a skin cancer specialist comes, if someone has skin cancer, there's an acceptable acceptance of risk. They're going to have a scar. This has to be done. It's medically necessary. It's a whole different ballgame when people are choosing something that is not medically necessary. So I have to be very cautious. And to me, this is the most important skill of a cosmetic dermatologist. You could learn how to inject. You could learn how to laser. It's developing that doctor-patient relationship.
When COVID hit, you saw the news and the articles about the Zoom boom on elective medicine. Did you notice different perceptions that people were coming in after when they were seeing themselves on Zoom and then coming in and asking for treatments? Were they asking for different things, or did you?
Well, people are always looking for excuses to want to do things aesthetically for themselves. And I think every generation, every few years, there's some sociological impactful event that changes the narrative a little bit. When MTV came out, rock stars they had to become pretty for video. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When people started, when the internet existed, people started doing things that looked differently. When the iPhone came out, the selfie became a thing, and now it's the Zoom boom. So again, I think overall we realize that whether you're a movie star, a rock star, a widget salesman, or an attorney, that we're all on camera, right? We're all on camera. And that means that we all want to be well groomed. We want to look vital, restful, not stressed, and a little bit better looking if we can. So I think these are all like pieces of a puzzle. I think it's just headlines that the Zoom is the new boom. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, let's shift a little bit from kind of the patient, challenges in dermatology and move over to the business of dermatology, and talk a little bit about the biggest business challenges you see in the business side of your specialty.
Well, I think the first and foremost is providing good care, and after doing this 20 years, that's my priority. I've learned that education is the most important thing. Also, after 20 years, I've come to the conclusion that the most important part of my success is to make sure I have fun along the way. That's a big challenge when you have a busy, successful challenge. As you climb the mountain, people think it gets easier, but it's tougher as you reach the top. There are more things trying to pull you down. And I think we have to focus on the big picture as the industry grows like that. But I think uniquely, as a healthcare provider, we are a service industry. And again, whether you're making pizzas or have a massage shop or a spa or a doctor, you have to focus on things like staffing and training and providing a service. What is unique about the healthcare profession is that we are not distributing candles and giving massages. We're doing healthcare. So it's a whole new level of liability, of responsibility, and of goals. So I think the biggest business challenge is making sure that managing staff, training staff, and protecting people at a healthcare level is the most important to a successful business. Because, I've met many really smart doctors out there, people I'd love to learn things from, that can't figure out how to rub two pennies together in a business. I have also seen very good healthcare business people that could use some help on the bedside manner and the actual skill of providing healthcare. My aspirations are to be a lot of both.
And you have multiple offices. When you went from one office to multiple offices, did you find that challenging? Because you can only be one place at one time, and you're trying to find that right balance between, good patient care and training with your staff?
This is the most difficult thing, Michael, because again, I am not, we live in a world, as you know, right now where there's enormous scaling going on in dermatology, private equity, buying out of practices, bringing in extenders, PAs, nurse practitioners, diluting the quality of the care, cutting overhead, trying to change margins of profit. So to me, this is my major focus. And again, I always focus on quality of care. I really try. I put a lot of effort into training my registered nurse aesthetic healthcare providers, having PAs that I've had. I just hired a new associate, and really focusing on training. I know not everybody can be me. I don't want them all to be me. I don't want to have 30 offices one day, and I don't want to make a big sale and cash out to private equity. That's not my goal. People always want to know, what's my end game? My end game is to enjoy the ride and to try and make a stamp on as many people as possible. Knowing I have only two hands, it's really about training people, keeping them close, and making patients feel like if they're not seeing me, they have a piece of me. And I don't plan on having that change as I grow. The battle continues.
Yeah. And I know we've talked about this in another our episode with you before, and how important education is for you and for your team. Maybe you can share with the audience, and you've said it a couple different times about training your staff. Tell the audience, if you want to share, what do you do to do that? Do you have them shadow you? Do you have classes that every Saturday morning? Like, what are some of the mechanisms you utilize to train?
Well, first and foremost, I try and take them out, be social, and once in a blue moon, get them a little tipsy, because I think camaraderie and everybody getting along is the most important thing. I have a very close family, and I look at the P. Frank MD family as an extension of that. They're an important part of my lives. So it's important that people get along the best they can. Number two, anyone that works for me is spending a large portion of their first year just following me, following my social media, given all the things we give to my patients to educate them, from my media, my marketing, my advertising, I give to my staff on a layman's level. Most of my nurses and doctors come from ICUs, NICUs, general dermatology practices. They first come as highly skilled healthcare professionals. They need to have some sort of experience in the healthcare field before they come to me. Unlike med spas, I'm not looking to pick nurses or PAs right out of their training and thinking that they could take a 6-hour course in injectables and do that. So they come to me with a very strong skill set. And after I educate them, that's when I start having many companies I consult and work with, train them on the various devices that I do. And then we have a hierarchy. I have 7 different managers in my practice, and each one of them spend time with each new employee, training them from social media marketing to how to use the lasers and the signature protocols we use. I wish I could say it was always so formal, like they're going to a camp, but there is a method to our madness. And I always say with every person that works in my office, this is not a 9-to-5 job. It is a position of growth. And there are people that sometimes come and go. We're not for everybody, but I always promise my staff, it is never easy, but always exciting. And there is a method to making sure that they become part of my brand.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so we've kind of walked all the way to the very end, in which we're going to the very last question, which is, from your perspective as a dermatologist, what is the biggest healthcare compliance challenge that you face?
Wow. Well, that's where you guys came into my life, because as I noticed, 10 years ago, something like that, the boom of the industry getting so exponential that there were non-healthcare professionals, limited expertise, licensed healthcare professionals, private equity, other people trying to make more of a business rather than a healthcare art out of what I do for a living. I really needed the guidance of you guys, legally, structurally, ethically, and in business wise, to really make sure that I keep things legal and on brand, because I want people to come to my practice and feel that first and foremost, they're safe. at that, and that they feel that, I've ironed myself out as the prestige brand. I don't claim to be the cheapest person on the street, but I do promise that we're going to give people the best experience with the most training and expertise. And I think the biggest challenge for the whole industry is keeping it safe and keeping it legal, because as we know, it varies so much state by state, and consumers out there looking at all price points, they just don't know. And unfortunately, 10 to 15% of my practice is still dealing with complications. And the overwhelming majority of those patients have stories of not knowing the education and background of the providers, not knowing if there were even doctors around, and not even knowing the procedure, laser or injectable, that was even performed on them. So even though I think my game is pretty tight, it's really about making the public, from my perspective, know the challenges out there as a consumer.
That's great.
That's awesome. Well, believe it or not, Paul, we have used up our time for this episode again. We are so grateful for your wisdom. Yes. What we'll do last time. Go ahead.
It's a constant, as a healthcare provider, you're always a student, you're always a teacher. And it really does take an army as we grow our expertise. And I'm very appreciative to have you as one of my troops, so to speak, because things are always changing, and that's the fun part. So you got to keep it as smooth as possible.
We're grateful for you and appreciate that. So what we'll do now is we'll say goodbye. We'll go into commercial. Brad and I will come back after commercial and do a little legal wrap up. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us today.
All right, guys, stay cool and enjoy the weekend. I appreciate you.
Thanks.
Many business owners use legal counsel as a last resort rather than as a proactive tool that can further their success. Why? For most, it's the fear of unknown legal costs. ByrdAdatto's Access Plus program makes it possible for you to get the ongoing legal assistance you need for one predictable monthly fee. That gives you unlimited phone and email access to the legal team, so you can receive feedback on legal concerns as they arise. Access Plus, a smarter, simpler way to access legal services. Find out more. Visit ByrdAdatto.com today.
Welcome back to Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. ByrdAdatto still here with my co-host, Michael Byrd. And, Michael, we have this great focus on the specialty spotlights, and we've been having these incredible guests join us throughout the season. And having Paul join us was amazing. Again, second-time guest, but each time he's on, I definitely get some different takeaways. And you could hear again, for our audience, I hope you found his passion for educating and training his team and really finding, what's legal on brand and making it safe for his patients, and really making sure they understood that. It reminded me of other conversations we've had throughout many seasons here when we talk about, in every single state, supervision and delegation rules can be so different, where, as Paul said, I might be the one doing the injection, but you went and saw someone else who injected, and maybe they shouldn't be doing it. Or someone was injecting and maybe they needed a physician or PA, a nurse practitioner on site. And so just the supervision and delegation rules are so unique in every single state. But dermatology itself is a very unique scope of practice. And maybe you can jump in and talk about the uniqueness of New York versus other states.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, you have, as you mentioned, this more broadly the importance of supervision and delegation. And then you get into, particularly in dermatology, different treatments that, because they're elective in nature, you don't sometimes know which license they fall with under.
Yeah.
And so, Paul talked about lasers, and that's medical in most states, and most lasers are medical in New York. However, in New York, laser hair removal is considered non-medical. You could walk into a spa with no doctors and get laser hair removal. Doesn't mean because you can that's a good idea. Because your risk goes up as a patient if that happens. But as a physician in dermatology, your boundaries, if you offer that service, are one thing. And then, even in microneedling, which is a pretty non-invasive procedure, common, you would think, for a dermatologist who specializes in skin.
Yes.
and yet there's like the tattoo board saying not the tattoo board, the acupuncture board saying, this is acupuncture, so you are have to be so certified to be able to offer those services. Now, that's really for illustrative purposes. There's some definite gray area on that. The point is that especially in dermatology, you got to drill down not just on who are the people that are doing things, but what are the different procedures, and trying to figure out, is that medical? Is it non-medical? If it's medical, then who can do it?
Well, Michael, it flew by again. That's the end of this episode, but audience members, do not panic. We will be back next weekend with a specialty spotlight with Jonathan Kaplan, and we're going to focus on the Surprise Act, the No Surprise Act.
I want a surprise.
Thanks again for joining us today. And remember, if you like this episode, please subscribe, make sure to give us a 5-star rating, and share with your friends.
You can also sign up for the ByrdAdatto newsletter by going to our website at ByrdAdatto.com.
ByrdAdatto is providing this podcast as a public service. This podcast is for educational purposes only. This podcast does not constitute legal advice, nor does it establish an attorney-client relationship. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by ByrdAdatto. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Please consult with an attorney on your legal issues.